Well, hello and welcome to stage 3 of the Tour of Boudica, presented by the Warrior Games, and here on Zwift Community Live. I'm Kate Bates, joined today by Anna Russel. And Anna, we've had two pretty exciting days of racing, but I have a feeling that there'll be a lot of fireworks out there today.
I think today is going to be the best stage of the whole tour. I think just because it's Caspat, it's the leg breaking course, hard for riders to get a rhythm on this one, and they'll have very, very tired legs from the last 2 days. So there's going to be a lot of blow ups, there's going to be a lot of attacks. So I'm super pumped.
Yeah, not to intimidate anybody who's in the warm-up pen taking a look, but it certainly is a tough course. Let's take a look at what's in store for the riders out on course today.
Stage 3 is our Queen stage, and we bring our riders to France, where they will be tackling the Caspat route. Today, there will be 2 laps which total 46 kilometres or 28.6 miles. Our final stage will see our warriors tackle the Aqueduct QOM reverse and the Petit QOM twice. Similarly to the sprint segment, we will be awarding bonus seconds for each of the QOMs. On each lap, there are 2. The Aqueduct QOM reverse and the Petit QOM. We will follow the same rule, fastest time for the QOM segment. The first through to 5th fastest rider on each lap will receive time deductions of 5 through to 1 seconds. For example, the first fastest on the QOM segment will receive a time deduction of 5 seconds. The 5th fastest on the QOM segment will receive a time deduction of 1 second. Bonus seconds gained on the 4 QOMs will count towards both the individual and the team's general classification. We will also be awarding bonus second time deductions for the first 10 riders through the final banner. The first 10 riders through the finish banner will receive time deductions of 10 seconds to 1. For example, the first rider through the finish banner will receive a time deduction of 10 seconds. With the 10th rider through the finish banner will receive a time deduction of 1 second. Bonus seconds gained at the finish will only count towards individual general classification. General classification. Final individual general classification. This will be the rider's cumulative general classification time of stages 1 and 2, plus the finish time of stage 3. We will then deduct all bonus seconds won in stage 3, both QOMs and the finish, to determine their overall general classification time. This newly acquired time will be the rider's final individual general classification time. Final team general classification. This will be the cumulative time of the top 2 best placed riders after stage 3, plus the team's general classification time from stage 2. We will then deduct the bonus seconds from the top 2 riders who amassed the most bonus seconds in the 4 QOMs on stage 3. Bonus seconds won at the finish are not included here. This means that drop riders can still contribute towards the team general classification. This will determine the team's final general classification and overall ranking.
Okay, we've got a big day ahead. Yesterday, Anna, it was all about the sprints and the sprint bonuses. Today, it's all about the QOM bonuses. I think we might see a few new faces today that we haven't seen emerge from the pack yet.
Yeah, I think the QOMs today pretty interesting. There's 2, but the Aqueduct I kind of just classify as a sprint. It's so short and it really only goes up to sort of 2-3%. So it's a very low-key QOM, but it's a good sprint. But the second one, the Petite, that is very hard. And I think you mentioned yesterday Antonia Reznikov, some of those sort of specialist climbers might come to the forefront. But getting a little bit of inside knowledge too, I think some people want to look at what happens before the climbs as well. You know, there's a lot of tarmac before that first big climb hits, and I think we might see a little bit of fireworks before that as well.
Oh, it's interesting. Well, before we talk about the individual riders, because we do have a few interesting races both for GC and also for team overall, let's just take a look at where the GC stands at the moment and also the team classification. So the Queen Bees today wearing that leader's jersey the distinctive yellow and black. We've got Jackie Godby, Cyrus the Pro's Closet. She was wearing that yesterday, certainly has a target on her back today. In the A, we've got Kerry Paul from Cryogen. In the B, we've got Hillivent Closter from Revo, Saskia Hopp in the C Cat from Sorella, and in the D Cat, Sophia Westberg from the Swedish Zwifters.
And in the stage, coming after stage 2, the A+ Team GC, leading still is 2024, second Cryogen, third Cyrus the Pro's Closet, fourth is I Race Like a Girl, and fifth is the Swedish Zwifters.
So in the A category after the first stage, we've got SDBC leading the charge there ahead of Cryogen. AEO is sitting in third. BRT is sitting in fourth. Lots of acronyms here. And in fifth is TBR. So that's the big ring. So that's for the A category.
And in the Bs, we have leading that out Team Revo, TBR in second, AO in third, which is actually where the event committee comes from. So we're going to talk a bit more about the event organisers today as well. Fourth is Rave, and fifth is the Swedish Zwifters.
And for that C category, the GC after stage 2, Sorella is leading the charge there ahead of Cryogen, Swedish Zwifters in third, BRT sitting in fourth, and Revo sitting in fifth.
And finally, with the D category, Swedish Zwifters sitting in first, AO sitting in second, Vixen in third, Revo in fourth, and BRT in fifth.
So it's been an interesting pattern yesterday, Anna. I took a look at all the numbers after the race, and certainly
you're geeking out.
Yeah, I am. I'm getting into. I don't have a whiteboard yet, but I'm certainly getting into the data a bit. And what I found interesting, if we even look at the A+ category, is how many races within a race you have there, because I think Jackie Godby sitting on the top at the moment, but Cyrus the Pro's Closet are a bit further down. In fifth on Team GC, you have the Swedish Zwifters. They're the ones that took the lion's share of the bonus points yesterday. So should we be looking at them and thinking perhaps they've got a sneaky strategy there? Because bearing in mind today, if you were to win all of the QOMs plus that finish, which would be a big task, but it is possible, it's 30 seconds. That's really solid time bonuses.
Yeah, the teams have got to do their homework. This is where they do have to have those whiteboards out themselves, because when you've got fastest segment time, not fastest across the line, that just adds a huge strategic element. And it's interesting what you said. I didn't see that with Swedish Zwifters yesterday. So good pickup. I think that's where a team has performed well in looking at what their strengths are and how they really make the most of those time bonuses. You know, maybe they don't have the strength to be in top 10 at the end, but they could really go for it during the race. So that was that's a good pickup. So we should be looking out for that today for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing you also mentioned that that Aqueduct QOM isn't so much a QOM, but what it definitely can do if people are going for time bonuses is just, kind of be the straw that breaks the camel's back, because it just that acceleration on and off, I think, can damage a lot of legs. So we'll have to see what happens out there. And I mean, Anna, we'll jump down to the racing as soon as we can. But it's been interesting development, I think, the last couple of days. We've had some really great overhead aerial shots. You notice, you mentioned that it's segment time, not the first over the line necessarily. We've actually seen people kind of taking advantage of that, haven't we? Sort of making their way through the draft of the bunch and taking those bonus points and segment times without actually putting their head in the wind at all.
Yeah, I know, and you definitely saw that yesterday. Use of that drafting power up, starting at the back of the pack, moving your way through. That's how you're going to get the fastest segment times. We do have the Bs out on course. The A+s are yet to start. I did just want to take this moment, though, to talk a little bit about the event organisers, because, we've mentioned it a little bit over this weekend that we've got a female production and commentary team, but it's actually an all-female event organising committee as well. And they're a great team. They race for the AO crew, who will see a few of them out racing today. And there's still Caldrell. She's an Argentinian, but now living in South Florida. She's in charge of all the website design and management and does all those info videos and some of the summary videos that we'll see coming out after this racing's done. Carla Williams, who was actually out racing at some point, but has been up very late overnight pulling together all these results. She's a mum living in the UK, but Peruvian originally, and started cycling after the birth of her child and just found Zwift a great way to get into it. Tina Grubler from South Africa, now a mum of 2, lives with her family in the UK. And then also Jamie Lee Wright from Guernsey, but now lives in London. And she is racing for AO, but she said she's actually saving her legs for the Zwift Racing League coming up next week.
Well, look, it's an incredible team of women that have put this race together. We're very thankful for that. It's incredible to see over 600 women participate in this 3-day stage race, and from across the world. It's only 5 a.m. here in Australia. Anna, a little bit later there in New Zealand, but it is a time zone that anybody can participate in if they're motivated enough to do so. So that is incredible work on the side of that. And did you know anything about Boudicca? Because I had to look her up. And Anna, she's like a warrior princess, a bit of a cult hero for leading a revolution in the UK, a Celtic noble family member. Yeah, really interesting.
That's cool.
When I saw it, I thought, oh, this is an interesting name. But Wikipedia that one because it's very interesting.
It's great. And we do actually see the A+ women have gotten out on course. We're just following Jackie Godby leading at the front here, and she's been leading straight off the bat as this race has started. So very, very impressive for her to make her mark straight away.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a mental game as well, like forgetting whether or not it's necessarily the smartest tactic. It's one that you don't see too infrequently with yellow jerseys, being the kind of leader's jersey. Normally when you say yellow jersey, people get what you're talking about. And in this case, it actually is half yellow, is to sit on the front and kind of send the message out to everybody that you've got good legs and you're there. Because if you're not at the front, people do talk a bit and say, where is she? Do you think she's got good legs? What's going on? And it slightly, I think, undermines the power of the team. But it looks like, Jackie Godby is certainly not backing down and not intimidated by what lies ahead.
I mean, just looking at that aerial shot there, this was a group that had 75 to start with. This is not 75 in this group here. So they've had a massive blow up right off the bat. So the pace is obviously super hot, and you can see again Jackie Godby moving to the front of the field, and she's all business. What is interesting to me and may give a little indication of the strategy, she moves back into the pack there. She's wearing an aero helmet. You can just see there with her yellow and black kit, she's wearing an aero helmet. Now, you would not wear an aero helmet in a road race usually, so this might indicate to me a strategy that Saris the Pro's Closet could have going on today. If she's in aero, is this going to be a solo TT attack off the front at some point?
Well, that's a good pickup. And if we were talking about in real life, I mean, firstly, you can't wear an aero helmet in a bunch race. You're not allowed by regulations. But more than that, they're pretty hot helmets. They don't have as much airflow or breathing, and you just wouldn't do so because it would be very uncomfortable to wear. That's not a thing in the Zwift world. And so I think you can actually make some braver choices, including disc wheels in bunch races as well, because it's purely about performance. So there's no disadvantage for her wearing that aero helmet in the main pack, right?
No, so she, on a individual time trial, you do get a 4% drafting benefit, but when you're in a massive pack in a draft, it's kind of a non-issue, non-event really. I did want to talk a little bit about this course CASPAT. As we mentioned, it stands for leg breaking or leg snapping, and is actually used by French cyclists as a term for when it's a course. Oh, well, sorry, I just want to see what's happening here.
Yeah,
just
this
noticed
is a big move.
This is a this is an attack happening off the front by Saracen Pro's Closet. I just saw all those numbers go orange. This whole team is off the front. This is amazing, and I will pretend that I don't know that this was about to happen, but this is a concerted attack, and that is the reason for that aero helmet. This is blowing the field apart. I absolutely love this team tactic.
Yeah, this is very, very smart of them. And look, I'm not sure that it will do 100% what they're trying to do by having a breakaway that's essentially a team's time trial, but it has certainly opened up some big gaps and snapped a few legs. Catherine Curry, I notice, one of the more experienced riders, a former World Cup winner on the road in Australia, in Geelong, actually. She's straight onto it, so she's reacted quickly, but the bunch is very, very strung out behind them. So it's been effective already because there are people having to chase gaps and being caught a bit unawares.
And if you look at those watts they're holding, they are riding this like a team time trial. You have each rider on the front riding about 5.5 to 6 watts per kg. They've strung out the field behind. If they can keep this going for another 5-6 minutes, they may just create some breaks because Jackie, as we know, her FTP is around 330. She's up at 6 watts a kg. She can easily start pulling this through, but we do see some of those cryogen riders just catching on, but this has created some huge splits in the pack, this early attack.
Yeah, so they have regrouped, but their strategy so far, I think, is twofold. Firstly, physically, Anna, they've just hurt a lot of legs and a lot of lungs, caught some people unawares. But secondly, I think from a mental advantage, they've also really shown every other team, and Team 2024 are on the top of the chart at the moment, that they're here for business. They are not messing around. They are not intimidated by what's to come. They back Jackie Godby in 100%, and they are definitely going to lead from the front. I mean, that's riding like a girl, different team, but yeah, pretty impressive tactics. And I also love, Anna, that you totally knew that was about to happen and managed to not say anything or even kind of lead into it. So well done to you.
Thank you. And we do see in that top right-hand little map that split the field, there is a bunch behind them who just weren't able to get on. And I might just check out Zwift Power and see who has not managed to catch on to that main group. It looks as though we're getting a next update soon, but they have jettisoned some riders off the back with that concerted attack effort. Now, it'll be interesting to know if that's the only attack in their arsenal or if they'll be putting in another one, before we hit those climbs.
Yeah, so it looks like they're down to about 51 riders. This is where we were at about kilometre 25 yesterday. We were down to 50 riders. So it's only taken 6 today to get to that. That's, yeah. I mean, leg breaker, lung fire starter. I think that this course is going to become quite synonymous for a whole lot of intimidating adjectives.
Exactly. And I do want to mention as well that we do have the B category out on field as well. This is a much bigger pack out in the B category. So we'll follow these guys for a little bit and keep an eye on whether there's any more sort of long range attacks happening in that category A+ as we move along.
So in the B+, the teams that are on top for us to watch there, it's Revo and TBR, AO, AEO. They are the 3 teams that are sitting on the top of that team classification. But when it comes to the individuals, I'll just bring up what's going on in the individual ranks because it is a much bigger bunch. They're far less aggressive, from what we've seen so far in how they're racing.
They have just sort of been moving along. I think it definitely seems like everyone's waiting for those climbs. I've tried to keep an eye on where that Queen Bee jersey is of Hilly Van Klooster. But there is another group out there called TFC who has the yellow and black jersey as well. So I haven't managed to spot that Queen Bee jersey yet. But I just have seen her name pop up there. So she's a Revo rider, looks like from Canada. So we'll try and get eyes on her at some point. But she is in this main group. So that is good work there from Team Revo. And we can just see her moving at the front there with the pink little cycling cap on. So she's comfortably sitting in that front pack as we watch this B group.
And Van Kloster she's got a pretty solid lead overall. She's got 27 seconds ahead of Melanie Dobbins from the Big Ring Racing. So I think normally when we're commentating Zwift, Anna, we're talking about points. And so often somebody can have a breakaway, but the only thing they really have to gain, is 1 or 2 points. That's the really big difference in this tour. And I think it's really interesting. And a great way to race, great motivator is every second you gain is a second you gain. So it is worth the attacks. It is worth that extra hard work. And, the other thing that we can kind of watch play out a little bit in the B-Cats is the on again, off again when they're sprinting quite hard for those intermediate bonus seconds on the QOMs, but 2 of the 4 QOMs, as you mentioned, aren't too tough. They're more like sprints. But they're going for those bonus points, and then they're kind of sitting up and easing off the pace a little bit. I mean, we say easing off the pace, they're still going over 45k an hour. So let's not think that it's just a roll in the park for these ladies. But it does have a slightly different profile than what we're seeing over in the A's.
Yeah, but it is, if you still look at that heart rate, which is kind of what I look at as a general gauge when you're comparing categories, because that shows how hard people are working. Not everyone can ride, 350 watts like we see in A+, but this looks like, around 177 heart rate. That's pretty high. So these guys are working. But the benefit they have, as opposed to what we saw in the A+ category, is that they've got a huge group. So you get a massive draft benefit. You can pull through at a really fast pace, as we can see here at 44k an hour, with our Queen Bee jersey off the front again. So she's riding aggressive today. She's not taking any risks, not sitting at the back. They are going to come through the village relatively soon, and they'll go through a sprint segment, which doesn't count today, but then after that it's very quick. Within the next K we hit that first Aqueduct QOM.
Well, they've got nearly 120 riders still in that pack, so far there's a lot of places to hide, and if you do have a bad moment, then the other thing we might see, Anna, is if any riders that might be struggling a little bit can make their way to the front before this sprint starts, and then when the pace increases they can afford to take a bit of a deep breath and almost float to the back of the pack. When you've got a bunch this big, you can kind of look after yourself a bit in that regard. That's a luxury that the A+ riders don't have with that reduced field.
Exactly. So it looks like, the A+ who we're following has a lead group of around 43, but this B group, they've got 118 riders in this front pack. So that's a huge front pack. I'm just looking through some of the other categories too. The A's, so we can only cover the A+ and B's, but the A's have a group of about 51 riders in the front, averaging 3.6 watts a kg. And the C's, 96 riders in that front group, and the D's, 35 riders. So the work that Saris did to break that main field down to that sort of 40 group will benefit them, I think, when they come to this next Aqueduct QOM. Because even though I've sort of classified it as a bit of a sprint, I think what it does, though, with the long downhill afterwards is if you can break off the front, which people will because they'll be going for bonuses, you can hit that downhill at speed, gain a lot of momentum, and it's very, very easy to break the pack. So I think after this first one, we're going to see both in this B group we're watching and the A+'s some significant breaks in that pack.
Yeah, any change of pace can really hurt a rider's legs. So when that sprint for an acceleration or acceleration down a hill, 5 metres can very quickly become 10, 15, 20 metres. We've all seen that dreaded pop-up, Anna, the hold the wheel. It feels like so passive-aggressive to me. Like horrible. On one hand, they're telling me, come on, you can do this, hold the wheel and you'll be right. And on the other hand, they're shouting at me when I've clearly just been dropped.
Yeah.
So depending on which mood you're in, depends on how you may take that one. But it certainly is a reminder that I think gaps can open up very quickly if you take a moment to tighten your shoe, have a drink. You can't freewheel on Zwift in the same way that you can in real life.
Yeah, exactly. And did just want to note, we've gone to a bit of an aerial shot because we are hitting this first QOM for the B categories very shortly. And you can just see, you can almost feel the sort of twitchiness with this getting a few little gaps in the pack. It was nice and close together, but now there's a few off the back who might start panicking. They'll push to the front, and that just pushes up the pace of the entire field. They go through a few little winds here through the beautiful French countryside, and then hit this aqueduct QOM, which, like I've said, is very short, quite punchy, pretty good for the sprinters, to be honest. Smooth roads, and then, like I said, goes into a big downhill. I just think we're seeing a few little attacks here off people dropping feathers already, which is a inopportune time to be dropping feathers. That might have just been a nervous little push there, unfortunately, for those riders.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking to use that power up, you kind of hover your finger over it, ready for that perfect time, and it isn't difficult to accidentally activate that. We'll have to talk about that amazing piece of tech I saw on your Instagram yesterday, Anna. You've got a bit of a high-tech power-up pusher.
Sure do.
Look at this string out.
Look at that rider coming through. That must be she will definitely take fastest segment. That is a cryogen rider who's just blitzed up. I think she's going to take this out. So that was unreal. Did you see her coming through the pack? Absolutely amazing riding from that cryogen rider.
Such a good example of the different tactics you can use when it's segment versus first over the line. So I applaud. We saw it yesterday as well across a number of categories. The riders essentially come from the very back of the bunch. So they don't have to worry about positioning. They don't have to worry about wasting any energy at all. The only energy they're really using is from segment point to segment finish, versus having to move up and position well to make sure you're there. It is quite different tactics, and I'm glad that the teams appear to have taken the time to really understand the ways they can make the most of that, versus just approaching it like normal. We're over on the A+ now, Rachel Lieberman for 2024. They have a very good team out there. On course, Antonina Reznikov is the big one, I think, that can come through today. She was actually second yesterday because she's got a good kick on her, good acceleration, but she's also got an incredible power to weight. So we've talked about how incredible Jackie Godby's raw power is, and Anna, it kind of makes your eyes boggle a little bit when you look at those numbers. But Reznikov, from a power to weight perspective, is very, very hard to beat.
Just seeing here, Sarah Surprise Closet again, all riders moving to the front. So this looks like could be Megan Isla who has gone off the front for Sarah Surprise Closet with, and you talked about them, the Swedish Zwift racers chasing hard behind. So they are definitely approaching this as a sprint type of a segment. Look at all those feather parrots, huge gaps being formed already, and I think this is going to be danger time when they head over the other side, and it looks like it's Catherine Curie who's leading currently, coming over that line with she looks like she's come through second. I don't know if she's got the fastest segment time there. There are some extremely quick speeds going when they drop those feather power-ups, and this has caused a massive gap in the field. As you can see here, strung out, you've got looks like Isla, last rider in that group, very, very select group, and they're coming now into this big downhill, and can that group of five at the front just manage to make their way back? We see a little bit of a chase going on here from Isla to get onto those lines, and I'm a little concerned now as to where, oh no, Jackie Godby is leading this charge. I was concerned as to where she was, but it looks as though she is leading the charge ahead of Antonia Reznikov.
Yeah, well, that's quite a pairing right there between Reznikov and Jackie Godby. They are quite different profile riders. So I think it would be quite a dynamic break, but it is all sweeping back together now. The most dangerous part of an intermediate time bonus, whether it be a QOM or a sprint, is definitely the aftermath and what happens when, it's not an unusual tactic, Anna, to attack with essentially over the top of a sprint. So when everybody kind of sits up and thinks, all right, I might take a bit of a breather, that's a pretty good and solid time to attack. The other thing I want to point out, if we take a look at that QOM on the left of screen, that gives you a bit of an indicator of what's gone on in the segment time. So Reznikov sitting on top there. But the factor I want to look at is that 31 seconds. So yesterday, that the intermediate sprints were only 10 seconds. So there are a lot of them, but they were 10-second efforts, and then they went on their merry way for another lap before they came back to it. Even though it wasn't necessarily the climb that makes these segments hard, a 31-second effort, that takes you into a whole new zone physiologically. It stresses you a lot more. Your heart rate gets up. It's a lot harder to then bring your heart rate back down. You need to make sure you're really focusing on recovering afterwards. And that's where the danger really lays, in somebody attacking over the top. And I think Godby was well aware of that. She had her finger on the pulse. So Godby and Reznikov had a little bit of a mini break over the top there. Neither necessarily wanted to pursue that, but what they do know, and also Catherine Curry certainly shining in that last one, we know who's on form. We know who's got good legs today.
Oh, exactly. I mean, the question is, what do you do to dethrone Godby at this stage? I mean, she seemed pretty dominant on that, even though it seemed more of like a sprint stage. I guess we'll see what happens on the next QOM, but how do you get ahead of her? How do these other riders...
the final KOM is only about 4K from the finish, and that's a much bigger one. So it's a 2.7K QOM. It's got about a 4% average, which means that it certainly has some steeper little kick-ups within that. It's kind of a bit of a rampy climb. I think that's where all the action happens. When there's only 4K left to the finish, it's not a mountaintop finish, but it almost may as well be, because if you can get any kind of a break over there, it's going to be really hard to chase that back. That being said, and this is where the power to weight comes in a little bit, we're talked about how Reznikov has a bit of an advantage. Catherine Curry is another one going up. They're both lighter riders, lighter frames, incredibly powerful, which just makes them very dynamic climbers, especially on Zwift. But what Jackie Godby has is a little bit more momentum down the other side of that. So her aim shouldn't necessarily be to win that QOM unless she's got great legs, and that'd be a great show. But what she needs to do is go over the top kind of within sniffing distance, knowing that she has a bit of a natural advantage down the other side.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I am just watching here. We've got both the Bs and the A pluses up at the moment. And the Bs, I've got my eyes on Van Klooster, who is the Queen Bee, but she is dropping. She doesn't seem super panicked. Her heart rate's down at around the 150s, but she has dropped from that main group. She's sort of got about 25 riders ahead of her, and it just makes me think, yesterday was a sprint, the day before individual time trial. She could not be a climber, so this could massively upset the category B GC individual standards. You can see there, she's now getting out of the saddle, but this is a big problem for our Queen Bee in the B category.
And kudos to the event organisers, because they've put together a really good course where different riders have their chance to shine. Can we just very quickly flick back to the A plus here, Anna, because it looks like Antonina Reznikov has attacked off the front. She's now solo and working hard, because look at those power numbers. Over 400 watts, holy moly, 176, 177 heart rate. This isn't an accidental gap that's opened up. She is absolutely going for it. And when you attack, you do not look over your shoulder. You commit to it, because once you've put in that effort, you're going to pay for it from a fatigue point of view. So you want to make it worth it. She has done that. This shows me, Anna, that 2024 are not going to let Saris the Pros Closet and Jackie Godby's squad control this race. This is a bit of a throwdown to me. This screams Nicola Cranmer taking control of the race. She's the most experienced team director in women's cycling, full stop. In real life, esports, you name it. She's the one with the brain and the experience. This is kind of trademark from her. I like it. This makes me get a bit excited about what may be furiously happening on those Discord chats. I feel like there might be a few expletives being thrown around.
Oh, this is... I've raced Antonia, and she is formidable on the climbs, and this is why. You look at that 180 heart rate, around the 340 watts, 6.4 watts per kg. This is insane. I mean, I do wonder what she's doing here. She's obviously going for the fastest segment time, but you look at the group behind, who's, gosh, looks well far in the distance now, 16 seconds. That's going, I mean, is she doing a bit of a Van der Breggen or Van Vleuten here and going solo for the finish? I mean, she's got a long way to go yet, but could this be what she's doing? Because kudos to her. That is impressive.
What we know about Reznikov is she's preparing for the Israeli Ironman in a couple of weeks. She's on form. She is as fit as a fiddle, and going solo clearly doesn't intimidate her, given her quest for Ironman. So she is doing an exceptional job. But she's a single mum of two, Anna. She's a heck of a multitasker. As I always call them, she's in the overachievers club. She really is a jack of all trades, and this shows a lot of confidence. And I really do think that there will be a few people back in that main pack regrouping as a team saying, what do we do now? We didn't expect this so early on in the race. Oh, and to be honest, I expected this exact move from Reznikov in a lap's time. So it's probably a lap earlier than I gave her credit for. But when she's riding at these powers, at this heart rate, and she's not slowing down, it shows me that she is certainly the one to beat today.
Yeah, and I have just pulled up the Bs too, as they've crested over the top with, it looks like, Boudicca from Cryogen with Rodriguez from Socks for Watts taking out a dominant position over the rest of the field, about 10 seconds ahead of a chase pack containing a lot of AO riders, Vixen, Draft, Revo. So we'll keep an eye on what happens with them. If they get caught up, or if they're going for this sort of long-range attack like we do see here from Antonia Reznikov, which, I mean, 30 seconds ahead now. This is just insane. She is approaching that finish banner of this petite QOM, and those numbers, 8 watts a kg I just saw there, that is insane wattage.
Well, we can see on the top right of screen, you can see the course there in that finish banner. You can see Reznikov coming up to that. Pretty incredible show of dominance up there. But there is a big pack chasing. So behind her, they aren't in ones and twos. They are actually still as a very big bunch. Newen there sitting in second wheel. She had a very good time trial day and showed her face quite a lot yesterday in the intermediate sprints. But the interesting factor there is Rachel Lieberman, the teammate of Reznikov, is sitting there. Jackie Godby ducking over onto Newen's wheel and sprinting over the top there. Lieberman won't be doing much work from a chasing perspective. We've also got Kristen Kolczynski up there, also team 2024. So in this chasing group of 5, we've got 2 from the team of Reznikov. So
this is amazing. Like, I have not seen this kind of a strategy. I mean, this is kudos to 2024, because now Jackie Godby and Catherine Curie have to do all the work, because Kolczynski, she doesn't need to do anything. She just has to sit in there, and Lieberman 2024, they just need to chill out and let their teammate get a massive lead. So this is well played by 2024. The only thing I would say is that they've already cut down that gap. It's now 18 seconds ahead to Reznikov. So that was up to around 30. And this is because this pack of 5 will move a lot quicker on the downhill. As you see there, Jackie Godby, who may not be the specialist hill climber, but she will be fast on these downhills. And she was in the aero tuck there. They've already clawed back 15 seconds. So this group will catch. I think what will be interesting is to see whether the group behind this one, see if we can get an image of, we can't even see them. So this may be our race, is these 5, I think they're going to catch up to Reznikov, 12 seconds ahead. They'll catch her up. And then you've got a massive split behind them of Paige Bolt from Finesse. You've got Christy Tracy from Saris, Ramsey there from Sisu. Those are some big names in that chasing group, but I believe this has been decisive for the race.
Now, this is quite unfortunate for Jackie Godby to be isolated. I have to wonder, sorry, Anna, I know that you know what goes on in the back room of the team here, but I can't help but think that they maybe missed the boat on that one, given how dominant they were in those earlier QOMs and the show of force that they had. Maybe a little bit of ill timing there. But 2024, their team tactics are impeccable, because you know what will happen if and when they reel Reznikov back in, who's now only 6 seconds ahead. It just means that Kolchinsky or Lieberman will attack. And then when they get caught, guess what happens? One of them goes again. Jackie Godby, Catherine Curry, they almost have to, and Viv Nguyen as well, they almost have to team up in who to chase, because they can't chase everything. And that's the natural advantage that having more teammates has. I actually think it's really cool to see the esports racing playing out in a very, very similar way to the in real life. You know, I've heard a lot of people say that it's not the same, but, you know, I think it is. And we've got that big chasing pack. Is that what you're saying in the background, Anna?
They're gonna get back on. I just saw that time come down huge over that downhill. So it just shows the benefit of a big pack on a downhill will always catch back up. So you just, you know, I know you're saying the 2024 strategy is great, but if because they're lighter riders and they can't get as much momentum on that down, they're always going to get caught by this chasing pack. And you've got a whole bunch of people who've just been pulled up now and pulled back together. So that what we saw as a single rider off the front, what I thought would just end up being 6 riders to the end, is now all come together, and it looks like a group of, I'm going to guess, around 16 to 20. So that's now got 3 Sarasa Pros Closet riders, looks like 4 2024, and a few Sisu I Race Like a Girl riders, about 3 of those as well. So that switched things up quite a bit. One thing I did want to touch on was, you know, you mentioned before when you've got, you know, a smaller group and riders from one team, they can all talk together on Discord. And I think, I mean, you'd know better than me, being an actual in real life racer, is if you're in that situation in the real world, you could probably turn to someone who's not in your team and maybe say, hey, let's do a bit of work, let's work together, let's try and like unseat these guys. But the interesting thing with virtual racing is they will not be able to talk to each other. They can't log into some different Discord channel. So they're stuck with only being able to talk to their teammates. You can't turn and make others work for you unless you comment on it on screen, and then everyone will see it.
Yeah, well, that would actually be quite funny if anybody did that, commented on screen. I mean, it would give us some good fodder. You're spot on. It's interesting, I think, the different kind of non-verbal, non-body language cues you can use to communicate. And if I was Catherine Curry, I would be riding next to Jackie Godby and moving forward when these attacks are happening, in that situation we talked about before, to kind of indicate without talking and without any body language. Doesn't this kind of sound like a women are from Mars, men are from Venus kind of conversation, that you are willing to work and you do want to get into it. But it is, you kind of have to get creative, don't you, when you're communicating, because absolute last ditch, and we've seen it a few times and it's been hilarious, when there's been a slight throwdown on public message.
Oh, yeah.
When they're getting so frustrated with each other and they just start having a go at each other in full view of the commentators and their fellow racers. I think that's quite funny.
I think it's hilarious. Yeah, maybe they don't realise quite that that's happening. But I did want to... Having a look at the B riders as well, it looks like a similar thing has happened to what's happened with A+, as we've jettisoned the Queen Bee. So the Queen Bee got dropped on that climb like we saw when the climb had first started. So she is gone out the back. That might be very detrimental to her overall standing. And we've got a strong showing in this main group from AO, about 3 riders from AO, which will be very good for their team GC position. BRT rider in there, a Revo, but you can see those green sort of multicolored jerseys of the AO riders. They're in a very dominant position heading into lap number 2.
Well, Lala Lawson from AO is the rider to watch. She's sitting in 3rd on GC at the moment. Melanie Dobbins from TBR, the big ring TBR, is the other one to watch there, and she's sitting on the front. She looks pretty comfortable. She should be feeling quite confident right now, knowing that she's kind of the incumbent virtual Queen Bee jersey holder at the moment. Of course, there's two different races going on. There's 5 different categories, but we have the individual classification that the riders are racing for, and also that teams classification. Some teams will be absolutely out there for individual stage wins. Others will be out there for the overall tour. So I have to say it's been a pretty impressive performance on day 1 and day 2 for Hilly Van Kloster. Climbing may not be her thing, but she's certainly put herself in that plumb position, and now it is up to Melanie Dobbins to see if she can finish that off. But Lala Lawson, as you mentioned, the AO team, they're, in terms of individual overall, Rose McGovern is the next one. She is a few minutes back. So Lawson is the one we'll be watching there.
And I did want to, we've just seen on Zwift Pass some updates with what's happening in the other categories. So we have category A. It all looks very similar what's happened here. The lead pack there after the petite QOM is just 16 riders. Into the C category, they've just got 14 riders after that petite QOM. And then the Ds are actually halfway up that climb, and it looks like 2 have broken away, being Erin Artessa from Vixen and Griffin from Vixen. So a concerted team attack there from those 2 Vixen Fox riders to get away in the D category.
I think some of the categories share the approach and share the tactics to it. It's easy to look at the power and look at the heart rate and differentiate between that. But actually, that's really the only thing that differentiates a lot of them. A lot of them are very tactically savvy. They're team managers all over the way that they should race. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why we're seeing them play out in a similar manner. What we might not see quite as much as we go through the categories is the depth within the teams. Often when one of the riders steps up, they actually go up a category. We actually saw that yesterday, didn't we, with Sunny, who won the A time trial and then found out 10 minutes before the race, I think you said, Anna, that she was an A+. That's quite a shock.
Yeah, I think that would have added a lot of adrenaline to that start line procedure for her, knowing she was about to race some of these full-on pros in the A+ category. But like I messaged to her this morning, you know, kudos to her for stepping up and going into that A+, because it's not easy, and you are racing some of the best e-sport racers in the world, as well as in real life cyclists and in real life triathletes. So it's kind of, you've got to look at it as you're inspired or you're intimidated. I prefer to go with the inspired frame of mind rather than sitting there and being intimidated by those around me.
Yeah, well, there's an awful lot to be intimidated about in this kind of world. So if you're intimidated easily, I dare say perhaps take up knitting. Maybe esports Zwift isn't your thing. We've got Lawson sitting in this pack here with Dobbins. They are the 2 to watch. It's pretty civilised. I mean, they're moving pretty quickly, but they're all working reasonably well together. They've still got one more big KOM. They do have both of them that they have to go over, both that aqueduct and the petite KOM. Isn't it kind of ironic that the petite KOM, petite being small, is far, far bigger than the other KOM? But anyway,
yeah,
that's just goes with the leg-breaking, mind-breaking kind of nature of this course. So they still do have a couple of big obstacles in front of them, and I suggest that it would be probably not the sharpest tactic to make too much noise in between here, because you can lose a lot more on those climbs than you can necessarily gain attacking on these flat sections.
And it's interesting because I can see both races playing out at the moment. They're both riding the same. Actually, these Bs are riding slightly faster than the A+ group. We'll have a look at these images side by side. So you can see the Bs there riding around 44k an hour, 38k an hour for that A+ category. So what I want to mention when why I wanted to highlight that was Zwift racing is all about, really, the finish line is the top of the climb, is the sort of mantra I go with. So if you can just push, as we saw, those riders were up at around 6, 7, 8 watts a kg, up that petite QOM. once you've finished that, I mean, we see Rachel Lieberman here riding at, 200 watts, which is easy for her. So all you've got to do, I say it so easily sitting here, is just like push that climb, get your heart rate really high. But look now, 140 beats a minute. I mean, these guys are just cruising like a zone 2 coffee ride on a Sunday afternoon. So all it takes, because they're riding as a pack, they've got the group behind them way back. They're never catching up. Now they can just chill out and then attack those next climbs. So when you're Zwift racing, the pain will not go on forever. If you can just stay with that group over the climb, it will chill out like this for like the next 30 minutes, and you just can get all your energy back. So I think it's a good little strategy just for your going to some races in the coming weeks in the Zwift Racing League, is just get your sort of 1 minute suffering really, really good.
Yeah, it's an old coach I had on the track and road, Petra Rosner, a bit of a legend, German rider, Olympic and world champion. And she used to say to me, she was very funny, she used to say, Kate, it will hurt, but it will not kill you. and it always resonated in my head in those moments where you do, because sometimes you're working so hard. And I really hope this isn't just me, Anna, so I'm hoping for some backup here. You're working so hard that you feel like your lungs and your head are about to explode. You genuinely think, this cannot be good for me. That's how hard you're working. And it's in those moments that you kind of have to stay pretty calm of mind and go, I'm in control here. This is okay. Take a deep breath, get back on top of it. You've got this.
Yeah, I'll definitely back you up there. And I think as you would empathize with, after having 2 kids, whenever I put in these big efforts, I'm like, is this as bad as childbirth? No. So you can keep going.
Well, maybe that's Reznikov's secret too. I mean, we have a lot of mums out on the bike, so shout out to all of those multitaskers. But, you're right. I think it puts things in perspective, doesn't it? And that's a very cool thing I will highlight about what we've seen come through the Zwift racing, is we've seen incredible athletes come to the fore that would not necessarily have the opportunity to race at a world level in real life, who may have kids. Reznikov is a single mum of 2. She's not necessarily in a position to go to Europe for 7 months a year to race a bike. We've got people, we've got lawyers, we've got doctors, we've got surgeons in training, but this platform gives them an opportunity to still stand up and show their athleticism. Kind of, it's almost a raw athleticism outside of the busyness of the rest of life.
Oh, yeah, I think Zwift has done amazing things for people who just can't get out and race all around the world, or race even all around their country. It's pretty hard when you've got a family to be able to do those things. And I think the ease of just wandering downstairs and racing against some of the best racers in the world, and then hopping back upstairs and getting school lunchboxes ready is, there's something to be said in that. It makes it a great use of people's time, but also they can have a bit of time for themselves and push themselves to the limit and, get that endorphin rush after a workout and go into the day a better person.
Yes, well, and I think possibly it's also got a bit more longevity because there's not that same burnout with having to commit in the lifestyle way that you do in real life. Let's take a look at this group. There's about 16 riders that I'm counting. Saris, the Pros Closet, the team of the leader, Jackie Godby, they look to have 4 riders in there, with Jackie Godby being so the team has the yellow at the top, the green at the bottom. Jackie Godby's got the yellow and black striped Queen Bee jersey on as the leader. So they've come back well from what happened over that QOM. Anna, do you think that they'll be a bit more wary coming up to this next QOM, knowing just the damage that was caused on that last time through?
Yeah, I mean, I think Reznikov, she played her cards. So people now know what her game is, that she's an extremely good climber. Will she get away again? Yeah, potentially, because she showed some numbers there that will be very hard to match. But can they get her on the downhill? Yes, because she's a light rider. She doesn't have the same momentum going solo. So I do believe that they may just let her go again and know that they can catch her up and save their legs for what will need to be a big sprint. The biggest time bonuses for the finish line go 10 deep. So it's not like the intermediaries that go 5. So I think people will want that finish line time bonus. But looking at here, we have 3 from Sarah Sapro's closet. We've got 1 Socks for Watts, 1 Cryogen, which is interesting. That's Alana Brady. So in the team classification, Cryogen is 2nd and Saris is 3rd. So with 3 Saris riders, only 1 Cryogen, that may mix up the team GC. But 3 2024 riders too. So I think, I don't want to call it early, but I think maybe the 2024 is looking pretty good for the overall team GC. And Jackie Godby, to be honest, she just has to stay in touch with these guys. I don't think she's got much of a risk here of losing her individual GC. She's just got to stay here, stay comfortable, make sure she doesn't lose too much time on the climb. She's got a couple of teammates, though. They can always form a little group and gain the momentum on the downhill. But, yeah, I think it's pretty comfortable there for the individual, but the team could get shook up.
Oh, you're feeling pretty confident there for the old Saris, the pros closet team. I mean, you race for them, Anna, so you do know the personalities pretty well and the riders, their capabilities, and also a little bit of sneaky tactics. I assume that you have been led into. You're right that 2024 are looking pretty strong between Lieberman, Reznikov, and we've also got Kolchinsky in there. They're all world level e-racers. So Godby is also putting out the powers that I would say make her internationally very competitive.
Oh, I've just seen all these riders come in.
Yeah, this is a big regroup. But I don't think this affects anything, to be honest. I mean, I think that this is probably an indicator of what you were talking about earlier when you were comparing the speeds between the A plus and the Bs.
Slow. But do you know what? That it always makes me disappointed when that happens, because you've put in so much work over that climb. You have destroyed yourself on that climb just to ease off too much and let a chase pack catch you. I mean, I did notice before that time was coming down a little bit. It looked as though some of the Sisu I Race Like a Girl team members were sort of working together and time trialing their way back up, but disappointing there from that lead group. I mean, you don't want a chase group to be catching you up. It seems to me like a total waste of all that work that you've put in. So there we go. They've paid the price for that, and they've brought up someone like Catherine Monks from Wahoo Finesse, who I know from personal experience has a phenomenal finish line sprint on her. So risky for going too early, I believe, there.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a rider like Reznikov and Team 2024, it probably won't make too much of an impact, because while, yes, there's a lot more numbers here now, there was not a lot of incentive for them to keep that pace really high when all of their competition was up in that lead group anyway. I mean, I think that's the consideration. Why would Reznikov and Lieberman and Kolchinsky turn the pace on with Godby and Tracy just sitting there going for the cruise? That doesn't make a lot of sense. But it does change certainly team classification. We might have spoken a little bit too early there with regards to Cryo only having 1 rider up there. They have 2 now, so Alana Brady won't be on her own. And Catherine Curry will have a little bit more reinforcement with I Ride Like a Girl. They've got Ramsey and Kessler up there supporting Catherine Curry. I was a bit surprised, honestly, that Catherine Curry wasn't between Godby and Reznikov on that climb. I did think that she might have a bit more punch up there. In saying that, we didn't see the exact moment that Reznikov attacked. So she's kind of lost that element of surprise now, hasn't she? Because everybody knows what she's going to do when they hit that climb.
Yeah, exactly. Both of the Bs and the As actually now are approaching that aqueduct QOM, so we might try and see, looks like the Bs are just a little bit further ahead on the course, but they're approaching that pretty quickly. Much smaller group with the Bs, although you do see just behind them, similar to what's happening, it's like they're playing out the exact same, a big group catching behind. So this course, it's played out a bit differently to I thought. It looks as though you do big attacks on the hill, you get away, but it's got so much long flat before you hit the next aqueduct QOM that these back groups, as long as they organise, can catch back on. So again, great work done on the climb to get this little group of 14, but now you've just had about, looks like 20 riders catch on, and you're going to go on with 30 riders into that aqueduct QOM on the B side of things.
Well, that was a bit of a surprise, wasn't it, that lap? We thought that would definitely happen on this upcoming lap, not necessarily the one earlier. Maybe they were testing the waters a bit and didn't have a huge amount of intention to stay away solo. It's good in hindsight to kind of unpack it and hear from the riders themselves. But we can only kind of have a bit of a guess, Anna, about what they might be thinking. But I do think that Reznikov in particular has showed that she's got the best climbing legs. And even though people will now be able to fairly easily guess what her tactics will be, it doesn't mean they'll be able to go with her. And isn't that kind of a good show of dominance when it's almost like, nah, catch me if you can.
Exactly.
I'm going to attack, but good luck chasing me. The bees are heading onto that aqueduct KOM now. Lala Lawson, she's sitting in third overall at the moment, but virtually in second because Van Kloster has been dropped, although she may be in this big free group pack. And a big move off the front there. It is the segment time, but it would be hard to imagine that won't be the segment time here from Megan Isler.
So she's she loves to put in these attacks. She often gets sort of a most aggressive rider when we're watching the Zwift Racing League, and she is gone for that one. It looks like Jackie Godby just coming through with an arrow, and just behind her, Reznikov. These guys, they are not resting on their laurels, even though they're doing extremely well on the individual GC. They don't want to sit back. They are attacking, and very cool to see Godby and Reznikov, like we saw on lap 1, heading off alone together. This is becoming a mano type competition.
Well, I want Godby to not take too much of the responsibility here. They do need to work between them. What a great shot that is, isn't it? Look at Godby in her aero helmet and her leader's jersey. But that 2024 kit is very cool. We talked about the Betty Squad kit yesterday and how cool that was. But some of these teams have some really fabulous kits in game. The I Ride Like a Girl one's quite cool as well. So there's Reznikov. She's working hard, but she's not at her limit. We now know her heart rate can creep over the 180 mark without too much difficulty. We saw that in the Petite QOM on the last lap. So 172, it's taken a bit of a toll chasing Jackie Godby there, but it would be interesting to see what Godby's current heart rate is and what zone she might be sitting in.
Let's have a look at that and see how well she is going as she traces down Kristen Kolchinsky. And Jackie Godby, 174, so she was working up that climb. And these guys have all come together, so it splits up very quickly. A bit different to what I've just seen happen in the Bs, where a little group of more 12 got away, but it looks like they'll get caught too. So, I mean, what this indicates to me as well is everyone is so motivated. And I think this is what happens when you're racing for a team, not just yourself as an individual, is when you get dropped, you tend to just want to work really hard because you know all those points and all those time bonuses count. So you just see a high level of motivation to get back on the pack. Not many people you don't see anyone just giving up and going, I didn't get it on that climb, I'll just cruise the rest of the race. Everybody is going full noise, which is just, love seeing it.
Yeah, you're right. There isn't any kind of complacency or ease going into this. Everybody, the reason it keeps coming back together is because the individual riders and the teams working together, they're pushing pretty hard to make this come back together. The on again, off again that we see when there's an attack and then it comes back together and they ease off, that is so hard on the legs. It's actually one of the more difficult elements of a lot of climbing. Like a lot of people struggle on the climbs, not necessarily because of the power to weight so much, but because of the on-off nature of a dynamic climb. And you don't often see it as much on the flat unless there are a lot of attacks, but it can be very, very wearing And I would also suggest that across all of the categories, when this is happening, it's a new experience for some riders. A lot of riders can get quite deep into their career without ever really experiencing one of those kind of days. It tends to be more that when the attacks go, they keep that going and keep that moving. Look at how big that pack is over with bees. Lawson here, she's virtually in second overall after we've had a little bit of a rejig there. Melanie Dobbins, she was sitting quite comfortably at the front when we last saw her. She's kind of the incumbent queen bee at the moment. They do have a big test coming up, so they aren't too far off now, this petite KOM. That's really their last opportunity to have a big dig, and it's only about 4K to the finish from there. So that is where they can really afford to leave it all out there, absolutely get those heart rates, and like they say, very much the business end of the race.
Exactly. This is coming up to really where it all comes down to who wants this the most. We've got both the A pluses and the Bs really approaching this climb at the same time. So we'll have a look at both as they approach this last climb. It takes, it starts off with that sort of 3% long straight-ish road heading into it, and then you hit the hairpins and it goes up to that 6, sort of 7, 8%, and that's where we saw, you can just see they've on the left hand side, the A pluses have just gone over that QOM side on the road, and we're already seeing an attack. Might just head over here and look at who this attack is from. I'm going to guess it's Reznikov, who again is pushing off the front. Have a quick look, but it's this is going to be business. Again, a huge group of around 45, but they will get whittled down very quickly. It looks like Kristen Kulczynski this time moving up off the front. So riding at that 7 watts per kg again. Lieberman right behind her. So Lieberman, although she's in that grey jersey, she's actually a 2024 rider, and they are going up together. So I'm not sure what their game is here, but it looks as though they're doing a bit of a 1-2 pushing up as we see Lieberman take the lead now, going up to around that 6 watts per kg.
Well, I think it's a smart tactic, because if anybody moves, especially on the lower slopes of a climb, you have to chase it. You don't ever just let somebody go. And by Lieberman being the one for 2024 who pushes the pace there, Catherine Curry, she's got the smart. She's sitting comfortably in there too. But Reznikov is just sitting nice and pretty. It would be a good opportunity for her towards the top of the climb to hit them quite hard when the legs are starting to wear. It's certainly a lot more of a controlled, smooth pace this time around. But it is 2024 that are, again, kind of taking control of that. But this is quite a big group still, very different dynamic to the last time they rode up here.
Yeah, and I think about something you said a while back when we were commentating the APAC League, was you attack when you're hurting, because then that means that everyone else is hurting. I've actually tried to do that in a couple of races, Katie, and it is not that pleasant. It's so easy to say as I'm sitting here, just attack when you're hurting. But when you're hurting, and we can see here the heart rate of Kristen Kulczynski is around 181, it's very hard to even put together sort of any thought process, let alone let's attack. So we'll see if any of these riders can pull that off. I do see Meredith Kessler just managing to make it onto that front little group, but looks as though we've got, Kristen Kulczynski here, another 2024 rider, Rachel Lieberman leading off the front, Christy Tracy in there, and Jackie Godby from the Sarasa Pros Closet team. So what this group needs to think is they need to break away and think this is who is going to be coming to the finish line, as we see Antonia Reznikov, 10 watts per kg, 9 watts now. She is pushing up that climb. She is just doing what she did on the first one. She's taking that strategy you said. You knew I could do it the first time, watch me do it the second time.
That is the move that we have been waiting for. Antonina Reznikov over that 10 watts per kilo. Holy moly, it makes your legs burn just thinking about that. She has opened a good solid gap. It's 4 seconds already back to Lieberman, opening up pretty quickly to 5 seconds now. Catherine Curry with Lieberman, also Vine Newen. So it's a group of very familiar chasers there. But Kolchinsky is also there as well. Once again, 2024 kind of have the numeric advantage. I'm not seeing too much support for Godby there. We do have Christy Tracy kind of hanging on the back of that chase group. So she
Dana
went
Wagner,
over with
just behind
12
as well.
seconds last time, Reznikov, and it opened to 15 or 16 pretty quickly as they went down the other side. So, look, she's at limit, 186 heart rate, pushing toward that 400 watts still at this point in the attack and the climb. It's a really good move. She just has to absolutely keep this intensity up as much as she can. 187 heart rate now. She's on the limit. It's paying its dues. The gap is now 15 seconds. She isn't even at the top yet. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I've got to say, Anna, this is more decisive than last lap.
It is, and I do just want to note what's happening in the B category as well. We've got the same 1-2 battle we had on the first lap between Barbic from Crygen and Rodriguez from Socks for Watts. They have pulled out a gain of, similar to on our A+ ride, about 15 seconds. So we could watch them take a 1-2 to the finish line because they can use each other's momentum as they're hitting that big downhill, which basically takes you all the way to the finish of today's race. But I do just want to see with Reznikov how 25 seconds, it looks like. We can't even see the riders behind her. I would be interested to know how quickly she's going to hit this downhill because she cruised on the first lap, but we can see here she is punching 350 watts pushing downhill. She's going all in for the win.
Yeah, the heart rate is continuing to climb, heading toward 190, and that is a rather rapid heart rate. That does indicate a whole amount of effort is going into this. 13 seconds was the gap for the individual GC overall at the start of the day between Godby and Reznikov. That 13 seconds, when you take time bonuses into account as well, might be 14, it might be 12. We have to consider that. But she's currently got a 15-second lead on Jackie Godby. If she wins by 15 seconds, I think we can comfortably say that she will take that overall, as much as it will be quite tight. But if Godby finishes within a couple of seconds of her, then it'll all come down to time bonuses, and I'm not quite sure that Reznikov will get that. So this is all on. So Godby is chasing now. She's got Catherine Curry with her. We saw Catherine Curry was second yesterday. Reznikov took the win there. We knew that she'd be very good on the climb. Godby was a bit of the unknown, wasn't she? So much power, but we weren't quite sure if she could maintain that when the road turned upwards. But she has. I mean, not quite to the degree over the top there as Reznikov, but she's really done a lot of damage to the chasing pack, and her and Catherine Curry in that power tuck, hoping they can lessen that gap.
This is the third chase pack down the road. We're just in 2s and 3s now. Rachel Lieberman back in this group. We had Jackie Godby up the front, but we have Antonia Reznikov absolutely drilling this race ahead of these two, still 15 seconds. This is danger time for Jackie Godby, real danger time, because Reznikov, she is not holding up. 340 watts. This is an interesting one to me because you think Jackie Godby, who is riding at more around 430, weighs more than Antonia Reznikov, would be able to catch up more on this downhill. And do you know what? And maybe I'll do some whiteboarding on this later, but I think Jackie going into the super tuck was not a great idea, because the super tuck, you could see Antonia wasn't going into the super tuck. She was just pushing through the power the entire way. She was up at around 7 watts. And I think that has meant she's been able to push ahead. But look at those numbers. Jackie is still going into that super tuck, but 15 seconds back, and we are so close to the finish line. I think Antonia has played this perfectly.
This is quite a formidable performance from Reznikov. She has absolutely thrown down the gauntlet. She did it on time one up that QOM. We knew that she had really good form, and we knew that she would do this. It doesn't mean anybody could go with her. The difference, though, on this attack was actually that Lieberman paced up the bottom half of the climb, and it meant that Reznikov got to save the venom of that attack until a bit higher up on the slopes of that petite QOM. She's coming into the finish line now. That power remains incredibly high. This is such a dominating performance by her. That heart rate is also up. How good is it? Side comment to see all of this data. But it does look like Antonina Reznikov will certainly take the win on this stage. It's now a waiting game about what will happen with Godby chasing. Is Catherine Curry going to help Godby? Does she have a lot to gain from that? Well, we need to consider that Catherine Curry is also looking to ensure that she cements her place on the podium. So an incredible win there from Reznikov. But look at Godby. She's chasing in now. I think she might get within this 13 seconds. I do. This is going to be really tight. Catherine Curry actually crosses the line in front of Godby. But what was that gap? That will be what determines the overall. My goodness me, what a finish.
And I do just want to see what's happening here in the Bs because it's getting pretty exciting. We've had Barbic and Rodriguez go over the top of the climb ahead, but as you can see, that chase pack is only 3 seconds behind as they're coming into the bottom of the climb and into the city where we just saw Antonina Reznikov take off the A+.
So we've actually seen in the A+, 9 seconds was the gap at the finish there, Anna, between Reznikov and Godby. So it will all come down to those intermediate sprints. My goodness me, that is an absolute cracker. But it is all happening in this B as well. These two riders off the front, Barbic and Lawson. Lawson certainly has a bit of an advantage in the overall. So we'll just have to see if this chase group can come back, because Lawson certainly has a lot of motivation and impetus to chase there. Dobbins as well is currently incumbent in that.
Dobbins is putting in a huge sprint here from Dobbins. Leichberg, Swedish Zwift Racers, looks like they will take that out with Dobbins just behind. Amazing finish there from those two riders chasing on and then getting into the sprint points. So those are the two races complete there for A+ category and the Bs as we saw today. So we'll have a chat through about what we think of what's happened today.
Yeah, my goodness me. Wasn't that a cracker? We knew Reznikov, we knew 2024 would absolutely bring it today. And Reznikov and Curry were the two names that we certainly had on the absolute top of that whiteboard for Godby to take a look at. A little bit more interesting over in the B category, where we saw a bit of a mix-up there with Hilly, who took that victory in the time trial and had a great ride yesterday. She didn't have such a great day in the hills. And so it looks like at the finish there between Lawson and Dobbins, I think we might have our 1-2 overall between those pair.
Yeah, and we've just we start to see some other results coming in. Looks like A is just coming to the finish line too, with Liz Shoup here from Sisway Race Like a Girl doing particularly well, and also the C categories coming into the finish line with Giovanna Fantuccio from BRT also performing well, although they're still on the last QOM. So a little bit of racing further for that C and D category, but that did not play out how I thought it would today, I've got to say. I mean, probably the biggest surprise to me was that front group leading the group behind catch up, although it didn't really change the finish line too much with Antonia. Obviously, you picked it yesterday, being the strongest out there on all intermediary points. That was definitely 2024's strategy, it seemed like today. Go for the overall, and you saw they were fighting for all those intermediates. So we won't know the final positions, but it's going to be tight. You've got to head over to the Tour De Boudica Facebook and websites to see later today who has taken out all those Queen Bee jerseys and which teams came out on top.
Yeah, make sure you check that website and also the socials. Massive shout out to all of the riders, all of the athletes that competed across the 5 categories this weekend. It's been incredibly entertaining to watch, and it's so encouraging to see 600 plus women sign up. Of course, a massive thank you to the organisers behind the Warrior Games and the Tour de Boudica. You've chosen a pretty good warrior princess for us all to role model off there. And we've got some pretty impressive warriors amongst the races there. Anna, thank you very much from the production side of things. You've done an incredible job pulling this all together. So make sure you head over to the website, check the socials for those final results, and also the Zwift Racing, the Zwift Live Power is a great tool if you want to really delve into it and get that whiteboard going.
Which I do. You'll love it.
Yeah, you do. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and let's look forward to hopefully year 3 of the Tour de Boudica. But signing off, I'm Kate Bates Anna Russel. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
See you later.